Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about types of interviews in clinical psychology. Please turn on your captions if you have any trouble getting along, and let's get started. There are different types of interviews, all of which help the psychologist understand their clients better. We are going to go through the entire list of them one by one. Admission or intake interview, as the name suggests, is done to take a very preliminary assessment of the client. If the client has checked in for depression, but in the admission interview it turns out that he is an ex-soldier who still has nightmares about the war, then the psychologist might refer him to someone who is apt at dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. This interview makes sure that the client is at the right clinic and requires a treatment in the first place. It also includes discussion about various policies and fee structure, followed by various questions which the client may have about the therapy. It also serves as a good opportunity for rapport formation, which is a fancy way of saying trust formation. The clinician gauges and tries to make the client trust them. This process of rapport formation keeps popping up at different stages of each therapy and is not limited to the admission interview alone. The next one is the mental status examination or mental status interview. It is done to assess the characteristics of the client and the presence or absence of any noticeable symptoms. A person's concentration level, perception of time, perception of place, etc. is studied and a plan for further investigation is charted out on the basis of those results. The psychologist may ask simple questions such as what is 7 plus 12 or who is the Prime Minister of India or who are you or what day it is in order to test the cognitive abilities of the client. Any deviation from the norm or any action which concerns the psychologist is written down. It is largely unstructured, which means that it is a free and open-ended conversation, but some people like to use structured interviews as well. Baker and Z. Parks gave a general outline of the mental status examination in 1998. First, a person's appearance, attitude, and activity are studied. Then their mood is questioned. Then we test their linguistic skills. Following that, we check for their thought content and perception, quickly followed by their cognitive abilities. Finally, we test their insight and judgment. Now, you already know a lot about crisis interviews because you have seen enough movies. Basically, you're working at a suicide hotline and someone calls in. You have to maintain a steady voice, calm the caller down, notify appropriate authorities, and take as much information as possible from the caller without yelling at them because they're already crying and one bad move would put their blood on your hands. Usually, the client is going through a fatal event in crisis interview. We want a very rough details of where the person is and what is happening. We have to ensure that the person stays out of fatal risk. You can call in the police or the fire department to report such incidents, thus breaking the code of confidentiality because you have to save a life. You will have to assume a directive approach for something like this to work out. That means you will have to walk the client through very basic stuff such as breathing exercises, putting down the knife or the gun, washing their face, etc. because they are in no position to make those judgments themselves. Diagnostic interview, as the name sounds, involves a complete diagnosis on the basis of all the available symptoms. The present symptoms are matched with the ones listed in the DSM-5, which we have already talked about in one of our previous videos, and then the disorder is determined. DSM-4 used to have an access mechanism for diagnosis, but that has been done away with in DSM-5, maybe because it was pretty confusing. The diagnostic interview also helps us in ruling out the disorders which the client does not seem to have. All of this sounds easy, but please note that multiple disorders share multiple symptoms. You don't know if someone's weight being reduced dramatically is a result of anorexia nervosa or depression, and hence one always has to be careful while diagnosing disorders. You have heard me say structured and unstructured interviews a couple of times in this series. Now, structured interviews are detailed and laid out. The questions are fixed, usually answerable with a yes or a no. The answer to each question determines the next fixed question which is to be asked. Please pay attention to the phrase fixed question here. This is known as a flowchart style. They are easy and quick to administer, but a lack of detail since they collect only quantitative data or data that can be fed into a machine to arrive at a conclusion. They are more reliable, unsurprisingly, because the questions are tested and standardized. Opposed to this, we have unstructured interviews which follow the normal course of a conversation. The questions are flexible and change as per the answer, and they are not fixed, unlike their structured counterparts. As a result, they are more detailed and tell us why someone behaves the way they do because they allow us to gain some depth about the client. This makes them more valid, but they are less reliable nonetheless. On top of that, while structured interviews are quick to carry out, unstructured ones take more time and the interviewers have to be trained to ask the right questions. That's all for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment, and see you next Monday. Take care.